Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Wendy Sachs. I'm a member of the board of Plant Powered Metro New York and happy to welcome you back to our monthly series, Cooking with Chef Carole, sponsored or presented by Plant Powered Metro New York. You may notice I am not Jim Spellos, who substituted for me last time, and Corinna did too, so forgive my absence. But a huge thank you to Jim, who's actually here every week. It just last time or the time before he was in front of the camera. He's always here behind the camera. Thank you, Jim, for producing us. Plant Powered Metro New York empowers people to achieve better health and overcome chronic disease through a whole food, plant-based approach to nutrition. We offer evidence-based education, resources, and a grassroots network to support and create community and inspire change. Together, as leaders, organizers, and educators, we raise awareness about the dramatic health benefits of whole food plant-based nutrition, empower individuals to make their own lifestyle adjustments, and lead projects that spark changes in food policy, practice, and food culture. So welcome to our show. Welcome to Cooking with Carole. Welcome also to those of you tuning in for the replay. And it's summertime, so all kinds of vegetables along with fruits are available now in the farmers market. I was just at one of the markets on the Upper West Side of New York yesterday and saw lamb's quarters and dandelion greens and of course kale and all kinds of greens, and the peaches and stone fruits are out. And oh my God, it's just an abundant time to be either at the farmers market or in your own gardens. As usual, we encourage you to buy organic or even better regeneratively grown vegetables because the quality of the soil makes a difference to your health and helps to regulate climate change. Or those of you who already know about this, you may enjoy participating in your local community-supported agriculture, CSAs. Okay, guidelines for today. Please let us know where you're from in the chat. Also, please ask questions in the chat. Carole and I usually allow time during her demo, and if not, we'll save a few minutes at the end for questions and answer as many as we can. And if you're enjoying the presentation, please like us on Facebook or on YouTube or on LinkedIn if you're watching from there. All of these help us in the long run. Quick announcements, July 26th, which is just this Wednesday, we have our Heart to Healthy Heart series. This week, Jim always hosts, but this week our guest is Nathan Bryan, PhD, who's an international leader in molecular medicine and nitric oxide biochemistry. And as you might know, nitric oxide is a key element in cardiovascular health. So please sign up on our website and join us on StreamYard, YouTube, and Facebook for this delightful and very, very informative life-saving series, Heart to Healthy Heart. And just so you know, PPMNY often takes off the month of August for restoration, and we resume usually in September. However, this year, since there's several holidays in September, we are actually adding in a cooking show with Carole on Sunday, August 13th. So mark your calendars, Sunday, August 13th, we are doing another cooking show with Carole. However, we will miss the month of September and resume again in October. So for today, a fun fact, because Carole's going to be using zucchini in a bit. Did you know that 1 cup of zucchini has just as much potassium as a medium-sized banana? Zucchini has a myriad of other antioxidant and health-promoting nutrients, and you can find more on Dr. Furman's 100 Best Foods, which is just loaded with information and has all kinds of pictures and recipes for ongoing plant-powered cooking. So finally, end of announcements. We're on to Carole, the star.
Nice. Hi,
Carole,
Wendy. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Wendy. And it was nice to, now I have you back and it's nice. And everyone does a good job at trying to sub. And And so welcome back. And I'm so excited about today's food. I'm so excited. Why? Because sometimes I make things over and over and over again myself. And I forget, oh my gosh, I have to demo this. I have to make this food for others so that they see that how wonderful it is. And today we're going to start out with these eggplant meatballs that a friend of mine gave me the recipe a long time ago, and it actually had Parmesan cheese in it, and it also had an egg in it, but most of the base is made with eggplant and white beans. So you'll see that I've made a few replacements for the real Parmesan cheese. We're going to make our own Parmesan, and then we'll just use a flax egg instead of an egg. So I just want to remind everyone that when someone gives you a recipe or you find something that interests you, don't just dismiss it because it has things in it that you don't necessarily want to eat. Maybe try to reshape it and edit it a little bit to make it fit your lifestyle. So let's get started, but I do want to give you a fun fact. Why? Because Wendy chose zucchini, and I wanted to tell you all about eggplant. Eggplant is an amazing vegetable. It is technically a fruit, because it has many seeds. It is part of the nightshade family, which is tomatoes and eggplants and peppers. Those are all considered your nightshades. It is said that it has so much fiber in it that in the magazine that Wendy just read from you, Dr. Furman says that it's a great diet food because you're guaranteed to lose weight if you eat a lot of eggplant because it's got so much fiber in it. And then also, one other thing that he mentioned that I actually knew because I make a lot of Indian food, but in India, the eggplant is known as the king vegetable. And I love that because I love it so much. And most of the time when people tell me I don't like eggplants, and I'm like, you know what? I think you've had it misprepared. And even I believed that long ago when people would make me eggplant Parmesan and it would be laden full. It would just have so much oil in it. And you can cook eggplant with just a little oil to make it nice, but you can also use no oil, which is what we're doing today. So let's get started so I don't waste any time, so I get to everything that we're going to do. I did include, we're making these meatballs, and I'll talk a little bit more about different ways of serving them, but I gave you a marinara sauce in the recipes, but we're not going to make marinara. There is actually a demo when I make marinara, which is really fast, just using a handful of ingredients. So I'll talk more about that later, but let's get started. So what we need to do, and today I batch cooked eggplant as if I were batch cooking sweet potatoes. I don't normally cook so many eggplants, but I want you to all see how many eggplants I made. Look, I made 3. I have 3 here, and I have 2 here, okay? Why did I do that? Because one, I just thought you can never have enough eggplant pulp. You can make baba ganoush. You can just spread the eggplants on toast, which is really delicious with a little harissa. There are so many things to do with the pulp once the eggplant is cooked. Now, normally I cook it on top of the stove over a gas flame, but today I just roasted it in the oven and it's going to be delicious. So let's just take our 2 off the sheet pan. And I cook these eggplants. The recipe actually says to preheat your oven to 375 to 300 it says, but I meant to write 375. So if you have the recipes in front of you, please just note that you're making your, baking your eggplants and the rest of your meatballs at 375. And that reminds me that I am going to go put the oven on. I've had the oven on most of the day today. I gave it a little bit of break. It's quite warm where I live. We're having a little bit of a heat wave here. So it's just nice to not have the oven on. So here are our beautiful eggplants. And what we need to do is you need roughly 2 eggplants. These are the globe eggplants. There are lots of kinds of eggplants. There are the Japanese long ones. There are the purple and white striped ones, but these are the globe ones. And they're not too large, the ones that I have here. And I hope I have enough, but I have plenty in the back. But our goal here is that we need to have 12 ounces. That is what we need for the meatballs. Now, all of these skins are going to go into my bucket that I have sitting in the sink for composting. So I cut off the top where the green, where it grows from the stem, and we're just going to literally cut this in half. And you see how it's cooked? And how do you know? What did I actually do to cook these? I took the eggplant and I took a fork and I pricked it all around. And then I put them on a piece of parchment and I put them in the oven for about 45, 50 minutes. And I cook them. And what they do is they cook inside. They get all shriveled. And how do you know when it's done? Well, you can take a toothpick or a fork or a knife, insert it, and if it goes in just fine, just like a potato, then you know it's done. But I usually just squeeze them, right? I just squeeze them, and if the pulp is ready to go, then it's ready to go. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to take a bowl. First of all, I'm going to put this bowl on the scale that I have here. First, I have to put the scale on. And when you're measuring something, you always want to zero the bowl out. So I hit 0, so there's no weight of the bowl. Okay, and then all you do is you just take a spoon and you're just going to literally take this pulp right out. Okay, you see how easy? And then you're just left with the skin, right? So that's going to go in there like that. And we're going to have to do that to get 12 ounces, and we'll definitely need both eggplants. Our goal is to get to 12 ounces. Now, we're already at 8 ounces, so that means that I have plenty of eggplant. I don't have to dig into the others. And often I save this parchment paper, but I'm just going to fold it up right now. Often I roast so many things that sometimes if I think the parchment is clean enough, I just fold it up and I literally put it in my refrigerator door until I go and roast something else. I know it's kind of a little crazy that I do that, but I do crazy things.
Carole, I'm interrupting for 1 second. Little bit of confusion. What temperature did you roast the eggplant at?
The eggplant is at 375 and the recipe says 300.
Right.
And that's because, why did I make that error? Because I right above the recipe, I talk about right below, I talk about making breadcrumbs. And
right.
When you make the breadcrumbs, those are going to be at 300. So right. I typed the same 300 twice. So when you make the meatballs and when you roast the eggplant, it's 375.
Perfect.
Thanks. Okay.
Yep.
And I guess we could talk about the breadcrumbs right now while we're talking about the degrees of the oven. I did make the breadcrumbs in advance. The original recipe calls for panko crumbs, whole wheat panko crumbs, which honestly, I've never seen whole wheat panko crumbs. I've only seen white panko crumbs. Panko is lighter, it's a Japanese breadcrumb, and it's very light in weight and it's just very light. But I just am using today, all the panko crumbs that I find here where I live are packaged, and they have salt and they have oil, and sometimes they have herbs in them. So I just decided not to have those because I don't want to add all those things to my meal, my meatballs. So I just always have breadcrumbs. The two things I always have that we're going to make today are Parmesan cheese and breadcrumbs. So let's just talk about the breadcrumbs really fast, because it's nothing like rocket science. I have Ezekiel bread in the freezer. This particular Ezekiel bread has sesame seeds on it. That's the one I like in the green package. But you can buy any bread, Ezekiel bread. And why is that bread good? Because it's all sprouted grains. And I think it has absolutely no salt, or if it has salt, it has a little teeny bit, but it's a very good bread for you. We've talked about it before. And they make tortillas and hamburger buns and hot dog buns. They make all sorts of kinds of shaped bread and English muffins. So I just just toast this bread. Literally, I take it out of the freezer when it's as frozen as can be. I separate out the pieces, and then I put it in an oven of 300 degrees. And I just let it dry out and get toasted. And then I break it literally into like pieces like this. And then I put it into my food processor and I just grind it into crumbs. So I end up with a whole jar of crumbs, and I use them for maybe making a gratin potatoes or sometimes putting breadcrumbs. There's so many things you can do with breadcrumbs. So they go right into the refrigerator and they can stay for, I don't know, weeks and weeks and weeks. I never ever have had them spoil. Maybe I go through them quickly, but that is how you make the breadcrumbs. And that is at a slower oven of 300 degrees, okay? The other thing that we're going to need for this particular dish is we need to add some Parmesan cheese. And the regular recipe called for Parmesan cheese, but there is such a thing as vegan parm, and that is made of nutritional yeast. And nutritional yeast is not baker's yeast, it's a different kind of yeast. I left out the bag here. You can get it bulk, or you can get it in little jars. There's lots of brands. I really like this brand. It's called Sari, S-A-R-I, Sari Foods. I realized that I have 2 bags. You see, you get a little bag or a big bag. I just order it on Amazon, and it's really good because this is non-fortified nutritional yeast, and it has no fake anything in it. It's really good. It's gluten-free, it's non-GMO, it's dairy-free. And I remember, Wendy, when I started first buying nutritional yeast, I remember you specifically telling me, be careful about buying it in bulk, just out of a bulk thing, because a lot of times they put a lot of stuff in it other than what's supposed to be just pure nutritional yeast.
Yeah.
So do you remember you telling me that?
I do. It actually, again, was very sage advice from Dr. Furman, who kind of brought it to everyone's attention because they add, they're just some additives that are not ideal. But
yeah, so that brand that I just showed you is a really, really good brand. It's a clean brand.
Looks great.
And I really like it. And like I said, I just buy it on Amazon, and then I just store it away, and it too lasts. And, it's very cheesy and good. So I just realized I was going to open this garlic, but I just realized we should just make the Parmesan cheese while I have it on my mind. Okay, so I have a tray full of things here. And you can see I have a jar, actually, that I've already labeled and dated with Parmesan cheese, because this is also something that I just keep in my refrigerator already made. So imagine that if you had the breadcrumbs and the Parmesan cheese, you're already ahead of the game, right? You're not having to do all these extra little things. So if you don't want to make the Parmesan cheese for this dish, you can just use nutritional yeast, and that's it. Okay, so all of that's fine. So to make the Parmesan cheese, and I gave you a recipe. There's many kinds of Parmesan cheese combinations. Often you put some kind of nuts. It could be walnuts. Today I'm actually ground a 1/2 cup of almonds. So I'm going to just put those almonds that I ground. These were whole almonds. You could use sliced, but no matter what, your goal is to grind them. And then I have 1 teaspoon of garlic and 1 teaspoon of onion powder. Okay, so that's going in there like that. And then we have a 1/2 cup of nutritional yeast. Okay, and that literally is our Parmesan cheese. And usually what I do is I just get it in a big enough jar, and then I give it all a really good shake. That's it. That is your Parmesan cheese.
Carol,
Yes.
quick question from Judy in the chat. I also have seen it with different cheeses. I mean, different nuts. I know you said you use different nuts, but she makes it with cashews. Is there a large taste difference between the almonds and the cashews?
I don't think so. It's just that, cashews are rich in highest in fat, right? They're all nuts of fat, of all of them. But I think cashews would be delicious. It's just that I use cashew for so many things, but I think it's fine to use cashews, walnuts. And I believe in the recipe, I even suggest, let me just make sure I do this, because maybe I didn't tell you this, but there, oh yes, I did. I told you that I often replace the almonds, because if you're watching your weight, you don't want to use too many nuts. And also for health reasons, you can get more nutrients into here. And I replace the nuts with hemp seeds. So
Great.
you can do that too. And then the other thing that you can do is, and I brought them out, and I'm just going to use them a little later, but you can use Italian seasoning, which is made up here of, I don't know what it has in it. It has oregano and marjoram and thyme and rosemary and basil and sage. This is a pre-mixed spice called Italian seasoning. And you could put that directly into your Parmesan cheese, so it's already, the spices are already in there. I like to leave my Parmesan kind of neutral because I use it for different things and I don't always want it tasting Italian. So this is not getting married today into this, but I am going to probably. So now we're ahead, a little ahead in the sense that we have two items that are always going to be in the refrigerator for many, many days and weeks. And you have your breadcrumbs and your Parmesan cheese, which you could use for various things. Okay,
and
so
quick question, which you may want to answer. I already did, but it's whether the almonds are roasted or nuts or raw.
I left them raw. But you surely, I'm pro roasting nuts because it just gives it more flavor, But I'm also, you all think that I cook all the time. I'm also the laziest cook ever sometimes. So sometimes I take the easy way out. So these were definitely not roasted. I mean, you'll see Wendy later. I'm making zucchini bread, and I think it would be awesome to roast the nuts. But if you think I'm doing that, I'm not.
Also, Susan, I'm just going to answer this. I owe you an apology. I was thinking of roasted store nuts when I answered you, but yeah, you can actually roast your own nuts without adding.
Oh, those kind of nuts.
So
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
No, I misunderstood, Carol. We're good. You answered much better. I'm glad I threw the question back.
Oh, but there are roasted almonds, is what you're telling me. In the store, that's what you.
Store, yeah, but
yes, the kind that say roasted, unsalted.
Yeah.
You know what, Wendy? I don't like those nuts.
No, me neither.
You know, when we get the peanut butter sometimes in the grinder and it says roasted, I'm like, I don't really want roasted. I mean, it's darker and more and it has a real flavor. And sometimes I don't want it to have that flavor. So I don't buy that when it's made with the roasted almonds. Yeah. I like raw.
Yeah.
I mean, roasted is good, but I like raw for what you were just talking about. So I'm just sitting here chopping some garlic while we're talking, but eventually we have to get a bowl. Okay, so here is my eggplant pulp. And I think for a moment, I'm going to eventually give it a chop with the knife. But I just want to show you this beautiful garlic that I got from a friend. I grew garlic this year too, but my bulbs weren't as big as his. But this is what garlic looks like. We planted here in the mountains in November, and we just recently pulled it out of the ground. My little cloves were my heads were a little smaller. I'm new at growing garlic, but the stems are long, and so these are quite short now. And when you see them all braided and beautiful for ornamental decoration, they keep those stems long and they braid them. So this is totally fresh garlic. So I'm very excited about having this because its powerful smell is just beyond. And I just chopped up one garlic that we're going to actually put in here. So I don't know if anybody grows their own garlic, and I don't know, first you get the garlic scapes. I'm going to do a cooking demo one day on 2-for-1 vegetables, right? Because I'm always talking about the beets and the tops, how you get beets and then you get tops and they're both edible. And now I just recently learned that the radish tops are so delicious. So that's another 2-for-1 vegetable. And I guess garlic could be considered a 2-for-1 too, because you get the garlic scapes and then you get the garlic. So wouldn't that be kind of fun to think about all the vegetables that you can eat, where you get more than just what you're going after, but you get a benefit of something else? I kind of think that's a pretty cool thing to think about. Wouldn't that be fun, Wendy? You could play that kind of game in the car, like or on the train when you're like thinking about things like
I love
what are
that.
all the
You know,
2-for-1 vegetables.
I never knew about garlic scapes until my friend Angela introduced them to me.
Ah, nice.
And she used to just come, with bushels during this time of year. I guess maybe a little later, sort of August-ish, I think they were in season. Anyway, they're very fun vegetable to cut with.
And I only really know to make garlic pesto with the scapes. I always just make pesto, because what happens is you end up with so many scapes. It's like super overwhelming. And I did have a lot of scapes already this year, and I'm glad that I'm done with that, because it just gets a little overwhelming. What am I doing right at the moment? I have a big jar of white beans. I made my own beans because I love cooking beans. These are some kind of white beans. They look like cannelli beans or Great Northern beans. You could buy those in a can and then drain them and rinse them and use those. Remember to buy the no salt can when you buy the, not the low sodium, but buy no salt, because they put a lot of salt in the beans to keep them on the shelf for a long time. But I make my own, and we only need a half a cup. I always use the bean water for something, sauce, or just, there's so many things that you can use the bean sauce for. So what I'm doing now is we need a half a cup, I think, of beans. I think I usually use a little bit more, but technically, let me just make sure that I'm telling you the right thing. The recipe calls for a half a cup. So I'm portioning out a half a cup of beans, and we're gonna just put them in the bowl. I put the garlic already in the bowl, and I took out a little more extra, and our eggplant was almost 16 ounces, and technically we only need 12. So I just am going with a few more beans, okay? That's okay. And today when I was thinking about this recipe, because I've made it so many times, right? So many times, that I thought, one could add mushrooms, chopped mushrooms, or you could add grated carrots, grated zucchini. You could do all those things, right? But I started thinking, does one want to do that? Do you need to do that? Not really, because these are not the kitchen sink meatballs. These are truly eggplant meatballs, and I think it's kind of nice to just keep them eggplant and the white beans. So yes, the question, if someone were to ask, can you add more things? I think the answer is absolutely yes, because if you've made burgers before, or you've made like a loaf pan with beans and things, you know that you can add all the kinds of grated vegetables that you want, right? You can do that, but what's the point, right? You don't need to. So right at this very minute, I'm just smashing, and I'm gonna show you how to make these that we're not even using a machine, okay? And I like that, because it means one less thing to clean up, and two, not every person has a machine. So those are just all smashed up, okay? And I'm just gonna give this eggplant. Now the eggplant exudes a little bit of liquid, but don't worry about that liquid. It's really okay, because we are going to be putting in things to thicken it up, okay? So I just give this eggplant just a rough chop, and that's gonna go in there with the beans, okay? Now we have to add some other things. We need to make a flax egg, and I just want to rinse this while we're talking. And if you don't know what a flax egg is, there's a standard replacement for one egg, and that replacement is 1 tablespoon of ground flax. So flax is a seed, and you want to grind it. I try to grind mine when I need it, because the nutrients, you keep it in a dark place, the jar with the flax seed. You don't keep it in the sun or anything. It's best to be stored in a dark place. Comes seed form. You can buy it already ground, and that's fine too. You can do that, but I buy it whole, and then I grind it as I need it. There are two kinds. There's a golden kind and a brown kind. I tend to buy the golden kind, but I have the brown kind too. So I have 1 tablespoon in this container here, and I'm just going to get another tablespoon, and it's 1 tablespoon of flaxseed to 3 tablespoons of water. So if I were just to say, hey, Wendy, I need a flaxseed, she would know just what to do, because this is a standard thing. 1 tablespoon of flax to 3 tablespoons of water. And if you're, trying to make a replacement for an egg, this is the recipe. It's not even a recipe. It's just the proportions. And you let that sit for a very few minutes, and it kind of gets all congealed together a little bit, kind of all gooey a little bit. So we'll just let that sit for a minute while I'm still doing things and talking to you. So that is just going to sit like that. We did our garlic, 1 garlic, and then it says we need a 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese. Well, that's a lot of Parmesan cheese, but I think that if I remember right, sometimes I do a little bit less. So we're going to do 1/3 cup of this Parmesan cheese, and then we're going to taste it, and if I need to add a little more, I'm always a little, what would you call it? I don't use a ton of nutritional yeast. I like it, but sometimes its flavor is really strong to me, so I'm always cautious. That's the word I was looking for. I'm a little cautious of when I use it, and so that is that. I added the Parmesan cheese, and then we also need to have a 1/2 teaspoon of ground black pepper, and I'm just going to turn my black pepper several times. I have 3 colors of peppers in here. I have black and red and green, and it's really nice. And is that a 1/2 teaspoon? I'm not quite sure, but we'll taste it, and if it needs more pepper, we'll add that. Now we also need to have, so we did our eggplants, our flaxseed, our beans. We did our garlic. We need to have fresh basil or fresh parsley, or you'll see today I'm going to use both. And then we need our breadcrumbs, and that's it. So let's chop. So what I have here is it says that we need a 1/2 cup of fresh basil leaves and or basil. So it's either, you can have either one or you can have both. I'm using this flat leaf parsley that I like. You can buy curly leaf parsley, but I tend to buy the flat leaf, and I'm just going to give it a good chopping. And then I have some basil that I just pulled out of the garden, and it's wrapped here. So these stems of the parsley can either get saved for your stock if you have a bag or a container in the freezer where you collect all your onions and your carrots and things that you're going to make your stock, or it can go into your compost bucket. Either one, eventually it all ends up in compost anyway, because after I make the stock with the cooked vegetables, all those eventually end up there anyway. And then in a paper towel here, I carefully wanted to keep all the fresh basil. I just wanted to keep it feeling and looking fresh. And it looks like this. It's the most aromatic. I don't know. It's like makes you feel like you're going crazy when you smell it. I love it so much, and I think I have like 12 plants growing in my garden. Oh, and these stems, I want to tell you, are really good. Once you pick off your basil and you have these beautiful long stems, mine are short stems at the moment because the plant is still in the ground, but the stems can go into your rice, and it will make your rice very aromatic and actually smell like basil. So that's just kind of a nice little trick. So basil is a very delicate fresh herb, and you don't really want to chop it to death. You just want to cut it up and chop it a few times, because you don't want to really, like basil, parsley, you really want to chop, 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 it like aggressively like this. But the basil, you just want to chop lightly, okay? So I'm doing two different things. On one side of the cutting board, I have the basil, and then I have the parsley that I really need to chop because we don't want any really big pieces. We don't want any big pieces of anything, to tell you the truth. So that's all gonna go in here now. All of that, it smells like heaven. And I like using the fresh basil a lot. We've talked about when you're not using salt and you're not using oil as your flavor, that you need to replace the flavor. And the best way to replace that is with spices and herbs, fresh herbs, spices, dried spices, fresh herbs, and then some kind of citrus. That is those are the things that you should have at your fingertips when you are when you're not eating oil or sugar or any of those things. You have to figure out what are the replacements. So I'm just mixing this with the fork right now, and the fork kind of helps get all of it mashed up. It looks super great. You can still see a few of the whole beans in there, but that's okay. Okay, and I'm just going to clear the way here. So we have to get our flax egg in here. We can't forget that. That's going to help hold everything together. And the breadcrumbs are going to help hold everything together. So let's going to do just a quick little cleanup. Just a teeny little cleanup so that we have everything in front. So we're just going to move this. And we have to add our breadcrumbs. Wendy, are there any questions while we're just doing a little fast cleanup here?
No questions at the moment, but I do want to just have a little shout out to those of you I see on the chat who all know one another. And what fun. I'm guessing you're all from a Plant Pure pod community. So it's just super fun that
I love that.
The whole group seems to be showing up, and yeah, it's really lovely having you all here. Familiar names.
Are they talking to each other? They're talking to each other. I love that.
Yeah, they're saying things like, I adore Chef Carole.
Oh, well, I adore you all for coming. That is that makes me so happy. So I've just taken out my sheet pen that looks like this. That is, I consider this to be beautiful because it's just been with me for so long. And it's like the one thing, I only have one and I should have 5 of them, but I use it over and over again and I love it so much, the sheet pen. I every other week I think, oh, I'm going to buy another one. And then I think, I don't want another one. I want this one. So, but it is nice to have several. I have a bunch of smaller ones, but it's nice to have several. So the next thing that we need to do is, it says we need 1 cup of breadcrumbs. Now, again, just like I was very cautious about the Parmesan cheese, I'm going to be very cautious about the breadcrumbs. We probably really do need the whole cup, but I like doing it a little bit at a time and seeing the whole thing come together. And sometimes maybe you need a little bit more. It really depends. Remember, I told you that I had extra eggplant. Usually the recipe calls for 12 ounces, and I had I had a pound and a little more. So here's the other half a cup that we're going to work with. This will go right into the refrigerator. And I've gotten the pan ready for us. The oven is on at 375, and we're just going to start to mix this. And what we're looking for is something to become a little bit so that it's not a really wet. It needs to dry out a little bit because the breadcrumbs are going to absorb any of the liquid, and we need them to be sturdy so that we can make balls, okay? Now, do you see how fast and easy this is? This is not, the only thing that took us time was to make the Parmesan and to make the breadcrumbs. But we didn't do anything to the eggplant. It just roasted itself in the oven. And you could do a bunch of it. And we do need a little more, at least another 1/4 cup. at least. We're doing this slowly. And I'm gonna move this because this is kind of in the way of everything. I'm just gonna clear things out. Look how beautiful. I love this garlic so much. I don't know if any of you know, but I have a garden now that I don't live in New York. I have a room for a garden. This is my 3rd season, and I've been so excited about having things grow in the garden. It is the most satisfying to pick things and bring them into the kitchen. It really makes you appreciate how hard farmers work to get the food to our table. It's incredible.
Carole, if you feel like it, if we have time, maybe you can show us a glimpse of the garden, either on
I know. I took a picture. I told Jim I took a picture, and I think next time I'm gonna show. I'll have a picture from today and a picture a month from now, just in a few weeks, and I'll show you because I planted so many, Wendy, this year. I did a lot of things from seed. Normally I would buy little starter plants, but this year I only bought starter plants for the tomatoes and for the peppers. But everything else I started from seed. And it was really risky for me because it meant that I was giving lots of space to seeds, and I really didn't know if they were going to come up from the ground. And it's been so dry and so hot. And I'm like a worried mother over these plants where I give them a little more extra water than the irrigation water that I have set up. And I've really just, I don't know, I talk to them, please come up, and I'll care for you and I'll treat you. I tell them nice things, these plants. And oh my gosh, the beet leaves are like this tall already, the carrot tops. And I can't see the beets and I can't see the carrots, but the tops are out. So I'm assuming underground things are going well. And I've just harvested a lot of radishes. And so it's very exciting for me because I'm not a gardener. I've never been a gardener. And it's just exciting. I'm going to use the rest of these breadcrumbs. I actually think it's pretty perfect as it was, but I have it already measured out. And I think the drier it is, the better. So back to my garden. Oh, and I have so much kale, Wendy. You couldn't even imagine having so much kale. I have to bring it to friends. I bring it as a bouquet when I go places. And I say, here's a bouquet of kale.
I'm sure all that love shows up in the food. And I'm not saying that, in a woo-woo way. I just think it just shows up. It's got to show up. So good.
Okay, so this is delicious. This is like really, really, you can see what it looks like. Again, when I look at it, I think, oh, does it need mushrooms? Does it need something else? And it really doesn't, okay? You could put some grated carrots, like I said. You could put added things, but it's so yummy the way it is. So why just leave it as is, right? So now I'm going to take a scooper. Looks like an ice cream scoop. It's my actual scoop that I use for cookies. And some people ask me, what size is it? It's about 2.5, it's about 1.5 inches in diameter, but it is number 40. So if you were ever ordering something online, a scoop, you would call it number 40, right? And that would be it. So I'm going to see if this is going to roll. I'm going to wet my hands. Okay, yes, this is going to be perfect. Remember, our oven is on. So to be quick here, we're going to scoop all these. And it's best to scoop everything and then roll everything. This is the Henry Ford of production, right? You always in the kitchen do your one task, the same task. They put tires on the car all at once. Oh, that's production, right? So this is happening. And we're just I don't know if we'll get to scoop them all. I don't think you want to watch me roll the balls and scoop. Now, this is a recipe that I want to tell you. I almost seldom I make sauce and make some pasta, but I eat these as soon as they're coming out of the oven. And I'm lucky that I don't eat them. I eat them like snack balls. And it's super crazy because it makes such a nice dinner. But I tend to really love them. So if you are wanting and so inclined, maybe you make a double batch. So I made all those eggplants and I have leftover beans, and I would not be surprised if I don't, if at some point this week, maybe even tomorrow, that I don't make another batch of these. Because I tell you in the recipe, I've made notes. I can't remember what they are, so I'm going to look at them. But you actually, I suggested that you can use these, and like it would be delicious to make these meatballs and then get a tortilla and then cover that tortilla with like hummus and then smash these balls if they were falafel, but they're not falafel, they're eggplant. And then put a bunch of vegetables like salad and carrots and roasted red pepper and then roll it up into a sandwich, right? It would be so delicious. So you can see that I've almost used all of these. Let's just get these rolling into the oven. And you'll see that I'll roll them all really pretty quickly. But you definitely want to wet your hands when you do this. And I've always made these into balls, but I'm sure if you're inclined, you could probably make them into patties too. Okay? I just thought of that idea this very second. I've never done that before, but it's a good idea. And maybe somebody else has another idea, but I think it's a pretty great idea. You could form them into patties instead of meatballs. And we're calling them meatballs because they remind us of meatballs, but they have no meat. So I just want to emphasize that. So I'm going to dampen my hands and shake them off so they're not so wet. And then we're just going to roll these really quickly so that they're nice balls. I have not done anything to my parchment paper. Parchment paper is good because it helps with cleanup and nothing sticks to it. It's kind of like a wax paper, but it's not quite a wax paper. Okay, and then these are going to go into the oven and they're going to cook for about 20 minutes. I'll probably look at them when they're halfway done, and sometimes I actually roll them over. I don't normally, I usually just let them all get done, but sometimes, now here's a big piece of parsley. That's kind of aggravating, so I'm going to stick that inside actually so that it's not sticking out. Right? And I can see that my hands are needing to be a little damp again because, again, you don't want them totally wet, but you want them to be wet enough.
Carol?
Yes.
A question from the chat. Can you make these into a loaf?
I guess so. Maybe so. Maybe someone should do that, and then they could write to me and tell me they did it. I literally just envisioned little patties just now, and it's the same kind of mixture, and I think it could. I just don't know how it will cut in something that's deep. I just don't know. I mean, they definitely, when they're little balls like this, they cook all the way through, and I'm just not sure, but someone should experiment and then write to me and say what they did. I think if I were to make it in a loaf, Wendy, I might add a little brown rice. Just for some, to make it kind of firmer and more solid.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just me thinking off the top of my head, and I don't know until you try. And like I said, I think it would be fine and perfect as little patties.
And someone else just wrote that they wonder how it would hold up in an air fryer.
Well, that is something that either you answer, Wendy, or maybe someone that cooks in an air fryer, because I don't own one. And although I think they're awesome to have because people have them and they tell me how much they love them, I'm a person of very little machinery. I have machines, but as you know, Wendy, I lived in 400 square feet in New York City, and for 18 years, I couldn't fit anything in my kitchen. And I'm still of the nature, I've always been like this, even when I've had a big kitchen. The less is better. As long as I have the right stock pot and the right skillet and a processor or two, you know, blender and a food processor. I don't go for all the extra gadgetry. And I totally understand why people love those things. But for me, it's just clutter. But it sounds like a great idea. And if anyone does the experimenting of putting it in the air fryer, please do write to me and tell me that it worked great. And then I'll tell everybody that next time that it's a great idea.
Perfect.
Okay, so see, whoops, I just rolled them towards you. Oh, yay. I'm going to go put them in the oven, okay, without getting them rolling towards you. So this is going to go right into the oven. And I almost just rolled them again while they went into the oven. And I'm going to look at the clock and see. So I see we'll give them 20 minutes, but that will give us time to make the zucchini bread. And I do want to just tell you the alternatives. So I gave you the marinara recipe. So they're delicious. Eggplant with a nice tomato sauce and some pasta is fantastic. I also suggested at this time of the year when you're getting those nice young baby zucchinis, the small ones, not the gigantic ones, but you make the zoodles when you're making noodles out of zucchini. You can either make those yourself or you can buy them in the store. I see lots of grocery stores have already pre-made zoodles. So the meatballs, eggplant balls, are really delicious on the zucchini noodles with marinara. I also suggested you can serve them over mixed greens. Just like you would have falafel in a salad, you could put these right into your salad, which would be delicious. I suggested making a wrap, which I kind of already gave the rundown of spreading some hummus on a wrap, putting a couple balls, smashing them down, and then adding some red peppers and some lettuce and carrots, and then rolling it up and cutting that wrap in half and having a sandwich. And then the eggplant balls are delicious with a side of any vegetable, with broccoli, cauliflower, carrots. You could just eat your vegetables with a side of eggplant balls. You don't have to make pasta. You don't have to make marinara. Those are just alternative ideas. And if you have any other ideas, you certainly could put them in the chat and share it with all of us. I did today make a very, very fast roasted red pepper sauce, but I'm not going to talk about that now because one, I didn't give you a recipe, but it doesn't need a recipe. But let's make the zucchini bread first. And if we have time at the end, I could tell you how to make red pepper sauce in literally 5 minutes. So Wendy, before we ever move on, I always like to say, are we in the clear with the questions?
We're in the clear. Okay.
So we are going to move on. These beans are going to go right into the refrigerator. And going in the refrigerator reminds me that I don't talk about this ever, but it's really important to drink a lot of water. I've been really conscious lately of drinking my full 64 ounces of water. Where I live here in the desert, it's very hot and it's very easy to get dehydrated. And I am, what would I tell you? It's hard to drink a lot of water. And we really do need the 64 ounces a day. You don't have to have just plain water. I have hibiscus tea here with big ice cubes that I put some fruit in when I made the ice cubes. I put blueberries and strawberries and blackberries in the ice cubes, so they're kind of floating around here. And then I put a little seltzer. So I'm just going to drink. I have this beside me. I don't normally take breaks to have water, but I just wanted to tell you that it's so important.
While you're drinking, I'll just add that I listened to a summit yesterday with this Harvard doctor, Dr. Uma Naidu, and she says a psychiatrist who does nutritional mental health counseling, and she's based at Harvard. Anyway, she said hydration is one of the most important things for mental health as well.
Well, it's also really good for our skin, right? When it's so good. People compliment me on my skin, and I always say, well, it's the water, it's the water, it's the water.
Vanity or sanity, it'll get us. It'll get us far.
And the thing is, Wendy, what happens, especially here, but anywhere, is when you start to become thirsty, you're already dehydrated.
I know.
So like I have done this in my workplace numerous times in the past, and I'm now doing it in my current workplace. I chose a buddy to drink water with. So she's very competitive, and she drinks way more water than I do, but all I care is that I get to the end of my 64 ounces in the time that I'm working. So she drinks twice as much as I do, but we kind of are in competition with each other, and we remind each other to get water, and we also fill up each other's water bottles.
That's awesome.
So just like when we were buddies, Wendy, you and me, when I transitioned and things from vegetarian to vegan, it's just always nice to have a buddy.
It's so good. I love that you do that with water. That's just super.
Well, when I worked in a really big office, we would have a chart, and I made a chart with 8 glasses of water, and it had everyone's name, and then we would cross off the glasses, and then at the end at 5 o'clock, we would go around to everyone's office, and if you hadn't done your 8 glasses, right, you had to chug the water kind of thing. So now I don't do it with the piece of paper and the visual thing. I just say to my friend, have you done it? Have you drank? And I kind of, because I fill up her bottle, we kind of are accountable to each other, and it's really good.
Super.
So it's as important as sleep, and it's as important as eating food. The water is essential. So, and I think we don't talk enough about it, and now that it's so hot, I make this really yummy hibiscus tea, iced tea, and make fruit ice cubes and some seltzer water, and I think I'm drinking a cocktail or something. Look, it's so pretty, and I just feel, it just makes me so happy. So we are going to go on to the next thing. We are making chocolate zucchini bread. This is definitely not my recipe, but I've slightly adapted it by adding chocolate. So the very first thing, whose recipe is this? This is Kathy Fisher. Kathy Fisher is someone that I learned to like so very much when I had to enter into eating with no salt, no sugar, no oil, and I was a baker, and I was almost lost without knowing what to do. What were the replacements? What do you add instead of oil to make things moist? You add applesauce, or you add dates, and there's so many stuff. So I kind of worked my way through Kathy Fisher's straight up food, and mainly the desserts I love the most. She has many, many good recipes, but this zucchini bread is special because it has a number of grains in it, and hopefully you can eat all these kinds of grains. If not, I don't know, I can maybe help you with a substitute, or maybe you'll know your own substitute because you're used to substituting. So the very first thing that we want to do, and I just realized I threw the bowl that I took out into the sink, and I'm just going to get it back out of the sink. We are going to, I measured 7 ounces of pitted dates. So you can use the medjool dates. These are the big, juicy medjool dates. These didn't have a pit in them. I already had them without the pit, but you want to weigh them before you have to take out the pit first, and then you put them on the scale, okay? If you don't have a scale, I encourage you, that is a piece of machinery that I think is worth having, especially if you bake a lot. Weighing things is really important. It's the most accurate way of baking. Or you can, if you don't use the medjool dates, you can use the deglet nor. And Kathy has it kind of pretty much figured out that you need 11 to 12 medjool dates equals 7 ounces. And I want to kind of see, because I often count them and see if she's right. And almost always, I mean, of course it's rough count. She says 11 to 12 medjool dates. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And she said 11 to 12 would equal 7 ounces. And there you got it, 7 ounces. So if you don't have that scale, you know to count the dates. So I'm just going to put the dates and the milk together. And eventually we're going to put all of that into the blender to blend it up into a paste. But it's just nice to get those dates soaking with the milk. Now I'm using a soy milk, but use any plant-based milk that you want. Try to use a clean plant-based milk. They are not all so clean. They say that they are plant-based, which they are. They're made out of oats or cashews or nuts or soybeans or almonds. But really read the container, because often it's a paragraph. For them to stabilize those milks on the shelf, they often put a lot of junk into them. So try to get the purest, or just learn to make your own almond milk or your own oat milk, whatever floats your boat you could do. I like the 3 Trees brand of almond milk. That's a very good one. It's truly just water and almonds. There are other Khalifa's, a pretty good brand, but has not as pure. So let's get to the things we need to do. So I have some walnuts, which are not roasted nuts, nor am I going to roast them. Wendy, I'm always going to remember that it wasn't a miscommunication. It's just we both interpreted roasted as 2 different things. And I like that. It just shows you that the English language is got, you know, nuances.
You're a sweetheart. I'm so used to people asking if they can buy roasted almonds in the store. I'd forgotten you can actually safely, without oil, simply roast your own. Which
right, and I only think about roasting my own and never think about buying them.
Right. Yeah.
So I've washed these eggplants. We need approximately 2 of them. I decided to do this in front of you just to show you how fast and how easy it is. And we are going to need, I'm just looking at the recipe, we need to have 2 cups. What I like doing, I make a lot of zucchini bread where I work. And so I kind of, I don't know, I feel like I do this all the time, grate zucchini by hand. You can do it in a machine if you so desire, but it just takes a little bit of time, very fast. What I like doing is it's one's nature to take a paring knife and to cut off the top and cut off the little bottom. This is where it comes out, you know, it comes out of a flower. And I have numerous flowers on my zucchinis. Maybe when I see you next, I will actually be able to show you that I have zucchinis. But they come out of a beautiful blossoming flower. So rather than cut it, I leave this part where it grows. I leave that so that's kind of the knobby part, so I don't have to cut it off. I just use it as the end, and we'll probably have more than 2 cups here, but we really only need 2 cups. Sometimes I try to buy the smaller zucchinis. They're more tender. You can definitely make zucchini bread with those big, fat, gigantic zucchinis, but sometimes they have a lot of water in them. So I just want you to be conscientious that zucchinis have water in them, right? So see, I leave the knob, so when I get to the end, that is what becomes compostable. I have some of these shreds here that I can try to get, but you have to be careful with your fingers. These are going to definitely go into the compost. And that is our zucchini. So you see how fast, and we'll measure that out in a very, very few minutes. And, oh, I think I want to look really quickly just at the eggplant balls. Just peek at them. Let me move this to the back. I know we're in the middle of zucchini bread, but oh, they're cooking very nicely. They don't need any help from me. They can stick a little bit to the parchment paper if you were going to try to roll them over, but right now if they brown enough on the bottom, they're not going to get stuck. If you start to roll them over and try to brown them on their other side, they're going to get stuck, and that's because they're still cooking, right? So you really have to let them get brown on the bottom so that they're not going to get stuck, okay? And let's put the vanilla. We need, how many teaspoons of vanilla? We need to have, I think, I don't even see it here, but I know we need vanilla. We need 2 teaspoons. I'm going to put the vanilla right away into the dates, and so I don't forget it. And we have our nuts here, and we have a piece of zucchini right in the oats. So let's get our container, which I don't know where it went. I just don't know how I lose my mind sometimes. I think that I must have put it away. Just 1 minute while I look. Yes, here it is, our container. So what we need to do is we have here, how much? 1.25 cups of oats, 1.25 cups. Now, if you already have oat that's ground into flour, you can just measure 1.25 cups. When you measure whole oats, 1.25 cups, you're actually going to get that much ground flour. So it's pretty equal when it's whole or ground. It's still 1.25 cups. Okay, I've measured it enough times to know. And then we need 3/4 cup of millet, and the millet is 3/4 cup, and this is a 3/4 cup. So we're just going to put that in there, and that is going to be basically our flour mixture. So let me move this Parmesan cheese and all of these things, and I'm going to do all this in the NutriBullet. You can do it in a blender. Probably wouldn't do it in a food processor, but a blender is good to have. So we're just going to blend this. It's going to be noisy for 1 minute. Oh, I think it's going to be noisy. Sometimes I think I've broken my NutriBullet because it can be difficult sometimes. Whoops, what's happening here? What is happening? It gives me problems like this once in a while. And then I wonder, what is going on? Have I broken it officially? Maybe I have. I just used it this morning. Interesting. Let's just, I don't know what's going on.
Is it plugged in? Is it plugged in?
It is plugged. Oh, no, it's not plugged in, Wendy. What an amazing idea. That is what you do when the computer's not working or the printer's not working. That's the first thing you do is it plugged in? And I didn't plug it in. I forgot. Okay, now it will work, right? But sometimes I do think I've broken it. This is a machine that I use so very much. That's what makes me think every time that I've broken it, because I use it so many times in a day that I think, okay, by now it's broken. You know, so here is our millet and oats, and that's going right into the bowl. And I have added to Kathy's recipe 1/4 cup of cacao, okay? If you want to add a little more, but I figured out that about 1/4 cup is just perfect amount. And I saved a little bag for you so you see. I'm using cacao. You can use cocoa. I like this brand Navitas. It comes in bags of all sizes, small, large, easily accessible. And this is my cacao of choice that I like very much. You don't have to use that brand. It's definitely not essential. Now, to this, we have a teaspoon of baking powder, a teaspoon of baking soda. We have a teaspoon of cinnamon. We have a 1/2 teaspoon of ginger, and we have a 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. So all the dry ingredients are going to go into our bowl here. And I like to get a whisk out, and I like to get it all incorporated and make sure there are no lumps of anything. Okay? Now, we still are going to need the machine because we have to grind the dates up. And we also now need to measure 2 cups of zucchini, right? So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to lightly pack it, but not like totally. So that's 1 cup zucchini there. And I think we have exactly enough. Amazing. I love that. Oh, and when I see zucchini, I have to tell you, I can only think about zucchini fritters, which I know I've made for us in the summer before. But immediately, as soon as I see grated zucchini, that's what I think about. Zucchini corn fritters. Sometimes I think about zucchini bread, of course, because I'm a baker, but it is so nice to make the pancakes. Okay, so, and now we need the nuts. She suggests 2 ounces of nuts. I actually pulled back a little bit on the quantity and did 1.5 nuts, 1.5 ounces. I think it's plenty. You can omit the nuts. It's really an optional thing to have. And as you can see, I'm kind of doing this all just chopping away. They don't have to be totally chopped, but they're going to go in there like that. Okay, and let's do our last part, which is mixing this to that. And then we'll show you what kind of pan we're using. She calls for a 9 by 5 by 3, which is a kind of normal loaf pan. I bake it in every kind of loaf pan, a mini loaf pan, a large loaf pan. I've doubled this recipe to make an extra big bread. You could make muffins if you so desire. All of that's good. So we're just going to put this in the exact same container. Oh, and I didn't show you that when you have nutmeg, it's ultimately best to buy the whole nutmeg. That looks like that. It looks like what a little squirrel would put away, a little tiny, looks like the size of a pecan in a nut, in a shell, but it's fresh nutmeg. This is a microplane, and it has a little storage area for the nutmeg, and then it has a little teeny microplane. And I never grind my nutmeg ahead of time. I always have it fresh because it is one of, oh my God, it is one of the most aromatic, heavenly spices that you can imagine. I like all the spices, so there's so many spices that are my favorites, but fresh nutmeg is definitely one that is, you have to have it. So that's pretty good. If you want to, you can blend it more, but if you keep blending it, it gets really thick, and it gets very, very difficult to get out of the blender. So I try not to over blend it, but I definitely want to have the, what do you call it, the dates all ground up. So I'm gonna immediately get this out of here, and probably the right size spatula, not a too small one. We should really, it's been 20 minutes now it's been exactly 20 minutes for our little meatballs, which I really need to attend. But we're gonna just keep them where they are for a minute in the oven, cooking away, because I want to get this done. And this just gets mixed up, and it's really thick, and you're gonna see that it's not super runny. It's pretty thick batter. Like I said, the zucchini has a lot of moisture in it. So the bread is gonna cook almost 60 to 65 minutes. When it's done, you'll put when I set the timer always for a shorter time. I set it for like 55 minutes, and then I look at it. I take a toothpick and I poke it, and I see if it's wet. If it's still wet, I let it cook for its full 65 minutes. Every climate is different. I live in New York, I know that. So every climate has different humidity and different moisture. So I'm going to say it almost always needs an hour, but maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter. Those are things you're going to have to figure out. Here in the mountains where I live, things bake differently because we're at a very, very high elevation. And sometimes I'm in denial that things bake differently, but I've gotten used to it and I've made the few adjustments that are needed. Let me just get a little sponge to wipe this away. And we are going to get the pan. Now, like I said, you can use any loaf pan you want. But the real recipe calls for 9 by 5 by 3, which is a normal one. This is a pretty enamel pan that I have. We don't need to spray it. We don't need to do anything. We just need to line it with some parchment paper so that it will come right out of the pan and it won't stick. So what do? I cut the parchment paper so it is the width of the pan, and then I put it in there. Now at this point, the only places that are exposed are the sides, and I've made it when I haven't put in a piece of paper going the other way, but for extra, like pulling it all out, I cut a small narrow piece and I put it inside there and I lay it in there. Now, it's loosely laid in there. It sometimes wants to move around. I have been known to tape it a little bit if it's too curly or moves around, but this looks really good, and I'm ready to, and the very first bit of batter that you put in, you want to be careful that things don't move around. Okay, so I'm going to take a big heaping and I'm going to get it so that things are stable, right? Your goal is to keep the paper from sliding around. And once you get a little bit of weight into the pan, immediately you can pour the rest of your batter. I'm just giving it a good scraping, and it's all going to go in there very nicely. The paper is not going to move around now that it's all weighted down. And it already smells heavenly. Why? Because it has the chocolate. I should write to Kathy and tell her that I've put chocolate into her bread. She'll probably be very amused by my idea. Maybe she's done it herself too. It's something you can't help doing sometimes, adding cocoa to things. I do it to biscotti too. There's so many things that I just add a little cocoa, right? So then I'm just making it so it has a flat top, right? And I just gotten some on the side, which I didn't mean to do. And I'm going to take this and get all the batter off, right? Now, if you want to have a decorative top, you could put some of your nuts, chopped nuts on the top to show that there are nuts inside. Again, you don't even have to put the nuts. It's not even a necessary step. But that's what this looks like. And this bread does not rise a lot. So if you're putting it in a pan and it's almost to the top, it won't overflow because it doesn't grow that much. So it's pretty much what it is pretty much what you get. So this is going to go into a very slow oven of 325 degrees. We would have preheated this oven if we weren't having our meatballs, our eggplant balls in that oven. But we are going to just clean up, and I'm going to answer questions, and we're going to get the balls out of the oven.
We're actually in pretty good shape, Carole. There's not a lot of questions, just a lot of salivating. Well, I'll speak for myself. I'm kind of salivating with that cake and thinking, gosh, do I really need eggplant balls if I've got a cake like that? That's just me. So
I don't know which one. Honestly, these both recipes are so much my favorite that I'm like, I can't believe I've waited this long to show these two things. And as I said, the balls can have a lot of different sauces, and I'm not going to demonstrate how fast it is to make your own tomato sauce. But I'm going to put this bread over to the side. I'm just going to get kind of a little bit of space so we can see what's going on here. The balls might need a little bit more, but they're looking gorgeous. They are looking so beautiful. I wish you could see how pretty, Wendy.
Mm-hmm. Gorgeous.
Oh they're just beautiful. I mean, they have sunk in a little teeny bit, like in the sense that they have a little bit of a flat bottom. but that's okay. And see, they're totally brown on the other side, and they're pretty much done now because really they only need 20 minutes. But what I like doing, and you can see what I'm doing here, is I'm just rolling them over and I'm kind of scraping them up. Again, they will have stuck if you didn't wait for them to get their little brownness on their little bottoms, right? And I kind of like them to be brown all the way around, but they are totally done now. We're going to put them in the oven for like 2 seconds more while I show you the zucchini bread and talk about the very quick red sauce that I'm going to show you. But see, now they're all rolling around. They're all safe.
I also love how versatile they are. Like, I love that you can put them over pasta or however ways you.
Well, these are my ideas that I just have come up with because not everybody wants to always eat pasta with marinara sauce because you do that with veg. There's so many. I just want you to know that things can be versatile. Yep. So I chose not, again, I encourage you. They are delicious with fresh tomato sauce, marinara. Maybe you'll get the tomatoes from the farmer's market. Make your own sauce. I gave you a very simple recipe, but you don't have to do that because you can make a dipping sauce of marinara. They don't have to be over pasta. And what I was going to show you, because at the very last minute, Wendy, at the very last second, I did get a little bit nervous that I wasn't having a final, I was just going to show you the meatballs. So I decided just to cook the littlest amount of pasta, the littlest amount. And I had all these roasted red peppers because that's something I just have in the refrigerator all the time. You can definitely buy a jar of roasted red peppers. They're very inexpensive. Buy the kind with no salt. Buy the kind with no oil. Sometimes it's hard to find a brine with no salt. So if you find roasted red peppers just in brine, just rinse them off and you'll be fine. But I have a jar like this always in the fridge full of red peppers. So today, before we met, in the food processor, I put 1 garlic clove, and then I took a half a jar, which maybe was 1 cup of roasted red peppers, and I put them and I mixed them with the garlic, and then I put a handful, literally maybe a half a cup of the white beans that I had just cooked so that the sauce would get creamy. And then you can add nutritional yeast if you want, but I didn't. And then I added some black pepper and a little bit of red pepper, so it would be a little bit spicy. And I made this very lovely sauce. Look, it's a red pepper sauce.
Wow, looks amazing.
You see? And it kind of almost, I mean, if you added a little of plant-based milk, it truly would be, it'd be almost a red pepper soup. But I just made it a little sauce. I made a teeny bit of, this is, it looks like a white pasta, but it's actually bean pasta, a really good one. It's actually one of my favorites that I recently discovered. I'm going to tell you what it is. I'm going to get it out because it's so yummy that it is hard to find. Here it is. It's by the same people that I like their tomato sauce, the Bio Nature people. And this is red and lentil pasta that I made. And it's really good. And it's 100% organic and it's gluten-free. So I just made the teeniest amount of pasta. And then we're going to get those meatballs out of the oven. We're going to stop the oven. We're going to get our little mittens on to get the meatballs out. Now look at those. You see they're all over the place. But we're going to get them out. Oh my God. I start to like, it's not even salivating. I just like, how many am I going to eat at one time? And how am I going to save some for tomorrow and the next night and the next night? That for me is always the question, right? So then we can put the little meat. Oh, I know what I was going to do. I was going to put this on here. I'm just going to put this little bit of pasta with a little bit of sauce. Didn't drown them, right? Now, it'd be really nice if I had some kale in from the garden right this very minute. We're going to put these little balls right on the top, right? And I didn't save any basil. How could I not do that? Well, I didn't, but a little sauce on the top, right? Just a little bit. And that is going to be our meatballs with pasta. But again, you can make it any way you want. And I'm just going to leave these here.
It looks fantastic, Carole. I think you're having us all just wanting again and again and again to join you for dinner and for dessert.
Well, if anyone is in the neighborhood, I mean, really, if anyone is ever coming to the Southwest, lots of people drive through. You just write to me and tell me that you're coming, and we'll have a dinner together. So I have had people do that, and I love it. I love sharing food, and I have chairs at the dining room table now. I didn't have chairs for a year, but I have them now. And so anyone's welcome to come if you're driving through.
Such an invitation. We have a quick question, though. I'm going back to the cake. Can you use whole wheat flour instead of millet on the cake?
Whole wheat flour instead? Probably. I think so. You know, as I say with baking, it is a science, and the minute you start taking one ingredient out and replacing it with another, it is your own experiment. But I encourage you to make the experiment, because you could be successful, you could be all the way successful, you could be half successful and have to adjust. I have done so many experiments in this kitchen, and it's a trial and error thing. So try it out, because I don't know, but I bet it would work. And then I'm just going to show you, I made the zucchini bread. The zucchini bread has to bake. I should actually lower the oven right this minute. I should put it on bake, and it goes to 325 start. I'm going to get it so it's lower. I made one of these this morning for you. See, and it literally came out of the pan. Literally, I lifted it up. Here's the sides. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to get a slicing knife, right? And of course, we're just going to cut it open. Oh, and it looks so delicious. Oh my God. Look, Wendy, would you like a piece?
I definitely.
Would anybody like a piece? I don't know everybody that's on, but anybody could have a piece that can taste
Carole,
and smell
I
it.
think you should move back to New York, except for your garden and dog. I know you love. But I definitely think, what's friendship about? It's time to move back to New York and start coming over for dinner.
I do miss our little dinners, Wendy, but I do come back occasionally, and I don't know, these days I'm loving my little home so much that it's hard for me to leave. That the only place I leave is to go to Santa Fe or Albuquerque. I don't because like you can't get everything where I live. I live in a very rural place, and there's so little. There's lots of things here, but not a lot of things too. There's things, but there's not things.
You're getting a lot of response on the chat too. I'm not the only one who would love to stop by and say hi, and who wants a piece of cake and all of that.
Well, like I said, I know our demographics are mostly in New York because we're plant-powered Metro New York. But because we've been online for 3 years, and because we are such a special community that we become national in many ways, and people come from all over, and there's so many of you that have been so loyal to coming all the time to our demos, and I love all of you for just showing up, because I do take a lot of time to think about what I want to show you. But this is from my heart the most special yummy things. And I'm so happy you're here today, and we can wrap it up.
Excellent. So I will redo all of our announcements from the beginning. Let me just see. Yeah, Annette is saying, can't go wrong with a collaboration between Kathy Fisher and Chef Carole. And there is a group here, Carole, from Chef AJ's show. So
nice.
We're doing this together, and we're all connected, and it's just thrilling having every single one of you here. So thank you very, very, very much for coming. Okay, quickly back to announcements. Please join us. It's not yet on the website, but we are adding another show with Chef Carole on August 13th. So please come join us then, same time, same channel. And then I highly, highly, highly recommend Jim Spelos's show, Heart to Healthy Heart. And there'll be one this Wednesday, July 26th, with Nathan Bryan talking about the nitric oxide and how key that is in cardiovascular health. So please join us for that. And let me just see if there's anything else. We'll be off for September. I think I mentioned that. And any courses you want to, or any of these events you want to register for, please go to our website, which is plantpoweredmetronewyork.org. And you can reach Carole at Carole with an E at thevegievanguard.com, and on Instagram, where she often posts her latest creations, you can find her at the Veggie Vanguard. And as always, if you're enjoying the show and if you have the means, you're always welcome. These are free presentations. But if you have the means, we can always use a donation for Plant Powered Metro New York. We do a lot of work in underserved communities, and the donations usually go to providing for Food for Life instructors and people like that to help us do our work in the boroughs, and also in Manhattan, but around here. And I believe that's it. A really warm thank you to Jim Stellos, and also to Alan Smithy in the background. And I think that's it.
Oh, Wendy, could I mention one thing to you?
Oh, yeah.
I want to tell everyone, if you are in the Southwest, that August 19th, Saturday, I will be at the Vegan Festival in Albuquerque. I will have a booth as well as doing a cooking demo in the afternoon. So if you're one of those people that just live somewhere near Albuquerque and want to come and say hello to me, and it would be great to meet you. And I see you in August. We're going to make a delicious corn salad from street corn that you buy on the street. I know it sounds a little odd at the moment, but I will explain next month. And as you said, we're off in September, and we are back to have more delicious food in August.
Awesome. Isla is stealing the show. So,
she's happy to be out now.
Lovely. Okay, goodbye, everyone. Thank you very much for coming.
Bye. Thank you.